Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. The discourse today, the subject of the discourse today is the 7 stages of spiritual purification. We have to make a certain distinction between religion and spirituality. The language used in religious circles or with reference to religion or religious philosophies is that of ceremonies, rites, rituals and festivals, all sorts of external practices, then a certain going to pilgrimages and pujas of all kinds. Now these are the various attributes of religious practice. But when it comes to spirituality, we don't have these languages, we don't have these terms to explain what exactly is meant by spiritual development or spiritual perfection. The language used here, just 2 words, that's all. One is that of purification and the other is that of perfection. In the last discourse we mentioned the difference between the two, or the distinctiveness between the two, the conceptual distinctiveness. Now, purification, I will repeat it again, once again. Purification refers to a process where, you see, you can't take things out anymore, from which you can't take things out anymore. It is so pure, cleansed, refined. There is no dirt, no filth, no impurity whatsoever to be removed. It's all cleaned up. It's all purified. It's cleansed. There is nothing impure or wrong remaining to be removed. So no subtraction whatsoever. Now, with reference to perfection, the idea, actually the core idea is the same, but the expressions are slightly different. Here, you can't add any more. In purification, you can't take out any more from it, and in perfection, you can't add anything more into it because it's fully purified. It's absolutely, totally, developed, perfected, and it has reached its consummation, so to say, state of perfection. Now, this too is a process. So, when we talk of spirituality, we are talking in terms of purification and perfection and development. And not in terms of various festivals and functions and rites and rituals and pilgrimages, and all these things are necessary because we live in a world which is basically imperfect, basically impure. Now you take your breakfast in the morning. In about a few hours' time, the whole thing is burnt up inside and you are hungry again. What does that mean? This metabolism, the metabolic process is combustion, it is a chemical process by which you burn up the food material that has gone in and then reduce it to the fundamental, you see, the elements which the food represents. Like now in modern terms, you will say vitamin or protein or carbohydrate and all these different names and terms that you use. So now that is what, while this metabolic process, you are also creating a huge amount of impurity and a huge amount of, you see, dirt and filth, which needs to be ejected out of the system. So there is a process of decay going all the time at the bodily level, and a process of defilement all the time at the mental level. All thinking starts with I. I am this, I am that, this is mine, that's mine. Sense of belonging, sense of possession. The reality, however, is very different. Everything is constantly changing. There is a dynamic change that is going on all the time, both at physical, at the bodily level and at the mental level. So this change, which is inborn and inherent in a state of existence, so long one lives, one is in a state of existence. And this state of existence is dynamic. It is not static, that is just it exists and prevails. No. It is moving constantly. So in this dynamic state, in this motion, there is the impurity, there is the decay, there is the decomposition at the bodily level, and also impurification. Impurification, that is the term of the mind. Because the very whole thing starts, the mental activity starts with I-ness and mindness. And sense of belonging, sense of possession and wanting all the time. Wanting this, wanting that, coveting this, coveting that. You may have a lot of things, you really don't need anything at all. But because your friends or your relatives or your colleagues and others keep on having things, you too must follow suit. If you don't, then you are a pariah, you are outcast, so to say, in a circle of friends and all that. You are defiant or you are non-conventional and all that sort of thing. And so you are rejected. So the deep sense of belonging, that I should be acceptable, accepted all the time, to be accepted by the society, by the world, by this, by that. These are profoundly ingrained traits in the human mind. And these traits, you see, condition the mind in such a way that the mind gets defiled. You see, all kinds of negative things come in all the time. So in spirituality, therefore, we have to understand very clearly that it's a process of purification, because a similar process is on. It's an ongoing process of impurification. Just as at the bodily level, so your body gets decayed, or from moment to moment it is just decomposing, aging. The baby, just an hour old baby, even the baby's body decomposes. Now that is the nature of existence. Anicca, impermanence, instability, therefore unpredictable. That is the nature of body and mind and life itself. So here in spirituality, your language will have to be different, your concepts will have to be different, and your thinking will have to be different. Because what you think as a mental action gets translated into verbal action, speech. What you think, that you speak. Thinking basically is verbalization. You talk to yourself, that is thinking. And as you talk to yourself, you verbalize, and then that process ends up in actual speech. So verbalization, which is a mental factor, now gets translated into a physical, bodily factor called speech. Sound, it is translated into sound. And the sound acquires meaning. You name everything with sound and give meaning to it. And so on, you see, from mental action to verbal action to bodily action gets translated into that. So these threefold actions, which are, you see, the volitional activity, they are intrinsic nature of the mind. They are going on all the time. So when you are caught up in this volitional activity, starts with mental volitional activity, mano sanchetana, then gets translated into verbal and mental. So this action is again something that is inseparable from mental activity or consciousness or mind. What we call mind or consciousness gets translated into action. And action is potent. It has got power to produce a certain result. So what was originally just a mental state of consciousness or mind now it turns into actions. First of all, mental action, thinking, etc. And then verbal and bodily action. And the action acquires, you see, action acquires power in this way. And action is nothing but volition, will to do. Chetanahang bhikkhave kammang vadami. Monks, I call kamma, action, I call chetana, that is volition or will or intention. as action. And the volition or will or intention is a mental factor. So you start with a mental factor to act. So the mind, what we call mind, gets translated into action. And that is happening from morning till night. You get up in the morning, the first thing you open your eyes, you are aware of the world. This awareness itself triggers activity. You go, you get up, after waking up, you get up, that's your bodily action. Then go and have a wash and this, that, one thing and another, one after the other. Either bodily action or verbal action or mental action going on, that process again, whole day. And these activities, you see, being charged with a power, with potency, they produce result here and now in this very from day-to-day life as well as hereafter. Where not all actions are producing results simultaneously. No. Actions are connected with time factor. It takes time to produce result. So once it happened, this activity and the action and its result being experienced constantly, as it goes on, and that is life. So in activity also signifies either it makes the mind pure or it makes the mind impure. Every action is motivated, and that is driven by certain mental factor. Every action has what is called root, mula. Now, action can be ultimately reduced to two distinct, very distinct and different categories. One is wholesome action, the other is unwholesome action. Wholesome actions are those that which is good, skillful, meritorious, that which brings good fortune, that which brings happiness, that which enables the mind to grow further, to make progress, to get purified, to get perfected. The unwholesome, per contra, is the opposite. It defiles the mind, weakens the mind, debilitates the mind, makes it more and more negative and poisonous. And the results are therefore very, is full of suffering and pain and trouble and worry, all kinds of miseries of existence from these impure actions, defiled actions. So now these actions and their results, you see, happiness, misery, etc., that characterize life. So on one hand you are having impurification of the mind and the actions, and you see these the motivations which are unwholesome produce impure results and great misery and suffering, etc. And the purification, the very opposite, brings happiness, development, perfection, purity, etc. So spiritual life is dynamic action, action rooted, not just concept. You don't talk about the goal of spiritual life is freedom. Very good. What does that freedom mean? Freedom of what? Every seeker of truth must face these problems squarely and not run away and take shelter behind words which mean nothing. You say, oh, Ananda is the ultimate, etc. No, that can be just feeling, ordinary feeling. So, to achieve something spiritual, it has to be very definite, clear and truthful. That is based on truth and reality. So, now this seven-stage purification, you see, this is the subject we have been discussing based on Sutta, you see, Rathavinita Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya. And it is a 7-step spiritual purification. And what are those? Since life is centered around action, action is the core element of life. Good or bad or neutral action. That being the case, so the purification therefore starts with action. So there is the purification of Shila Vishuddhi, the purification of virtuous conduct, virtue or moral purification, morality. Morality deals with good and bad, proper and improper, wholesome and unwholesome. The nature of an action. So, when the purification, life itself being, you see, rooted in action, purification also should be rooted in action. Natural process. Nothing alien in life. Development is always a natural process. Purification or perfection always a natural process. Nothing artificial. So, you start with action and that is called Shila. In the dispensation of the supremely enlightened Buddha, the teacher of gods and men. In his, you see, omniscience, all-knowing mind, he discovered the ultimate nature of truth. Ultimate truth, which simply means, in terms of living, in terms of life, transformation of mind into an element of freedom. Now the mind is not transformed, it is involved. It is involved in action, involved in the motivating factors of action, involved in defilement, involved in the idea of I, my, these, that which really don't exist. The non-existent factors are made out to be existent. The existing factors are made out to be non-existent. This is life, this is world, everything topsy-turvy. So living in an imperfect world in a topsy-turvy world, we have to manage life in a very wise manner, and that is spiritual process or spiritual purification. Proper management, skilled management of life. And what do I mean by skilled management of life? Skilled management of action. Now actions normally in the name of self-defense. That is the very primal sort of instinct in human beings, or in any being for that matter. So this self-defense, self-survival is a very big fiction, because there is no self. That's only a concept. So the whole thing starts with something which does not exist, yet you think, yes, it is existing. It's like walking on a pool, on a bridge, on the river, and you look at the river down like that, on the sideways, you just look. The river is flowing very fast current. Now as soon as you focus your mind on the current, this speedy, the speed of the river, the current, immediately you feel your bridge also is running in the opposite direction. The opposite direction of the river current. The bridge never runs. The bridge is static, it's there. You sit down on a train, and the train behind, you see, in front of you begins to move. And you feel that your train is moving, while the moving train is static. Now these are experiences known as optical illusion. Similarly, I-ness, my-ness, possession, possessiveness, all these are based on some kind of illusory experience. So this, when you confront life in its nakedness, so to say, rawness, this is what life is. So you start your action in such a way that survival business is not necessary at all. All you need to do is you manage your action in such a way which is non-violent. Don't kill anything, don't steal or deprive anybody, don't commit immoral actions, don't tell lies, etc. The Panchashila start with that. You start with Panchashila, the process of cleansing or purification is twofold. One is just by not doing, by abstaining. Panatipata veramani, abstention, refraining, by not doing. Nothing else. As simple as that. But it's not simple. Once you abstain from killing, you are protecting life. You are giving life. Ayudana, Jivana Dana. You are saving creatures. The creature whom you would otherwise kill now is saved. And the mind is to that extent purified. Then you go further, you don't just stop at that. You say, I will save life consciously as an intentional action. a deliberate action. So you promote all kinds of programs, you undertake all kinds of activity to save life, to promote the well-being of life. You start at home. This savage drive in mind of self-survival, you see, at the savagery level, there is no father, no mother, no brother, no sister, nothing. Each one is, you see, for himself or herself. Competition, fighting, grabbing. So now you formulate a system of family life where it's a collective existence, not just one existence. So the Sangha idea is a parivara, collective, aggregate living. There you share, you become selfless. The mother will give her life to save her only child. Say the Metta Sutta, Bhagavan said, in the Metta Sutta Bhagavan has given this example. Elevating the status of the mother, she is as great as a divine being. She protects child. She carries the child for 10 months at the cost of her own happiness and so on. So this idea of in the family of sharing, giving, not grabbing, not taking life, not driven by self-survival, not driven by the so-called idea of survival of the fittest. No. But giving, etc. So, you formulate your life in a way that constantly cleanses up the dirt and the foul matter that collects in at the mental level. So first is virtuous life based upon sila, morality. Morality has power. That is the potency in action. It carries its power to the future. It creates the future. You perform an action, you don't immediately experience its result. It's experienced the next life, third life, 20 or 100 life thereafter. So morality or the moral content of an action. If it is negative, it is destructive. If it is positive, it is constructive. And so, as you keep on cleaning up your actions, you also develop mindfulness. Without mindfulness, you can't clean up your action. You have to be mindful constantly, not to commit anything that is morally negative, not to commit anything that is morally unwholesome. So with morality, moral action, number of other factors involved. First of all, you must have faith in morality, in moral action. As a progressive action, as an action which leads to gradual purification and gradual perfection of the personality, of the mind. So now, this faith, rooted in wisdom and not blind faith, that characterizes Buddhist Sila Vishuddhi, purification of moral conduct, morality. So when it is based on faith, faith does not go alone. Faith to be faith in the Buddhist context, it must be linked with wisdom. So with faith there is wisdom. So moral purification includes mental purification at a certain level. With faith, you start your moral life, moral cleansing, and you bring in the higher element of wisdom. The purpose or function of wisdom is to penetrate into the reality of things. So this faith that you have got in moral practice, in moral life, has to be penetrated and found out why it is to be practiced. Why should one have faith in moral practice? So wisdom does that. So in doing that, wisdom needs other factors to help, like effort. You have to make the mind very active. It must have access into all kinds of things, and that means activity, action, and that means effort, self-effort, not somebody else's effort. No God is going to come and clean up your mind, no. You clean up your mind, you have made a mess in it. No guru will do that, no God will do that, no religious practice or rites and rituals will do that. It is your business. So once you do this, number of other factors come in. Mindfulness comes in. Then certain amount of mental concentration comes in. Certain amount of, things like forbearance and patience comes in. All kinds of wholesome, positive mental factors get involved with moral cleansing, with moral purification, purification of virtuous life. Because here virtue in this, when it comes to Vishuddhi, purification, it is not limited just to, abstention or refraining, not doing. No. You have to do also. So when it both not doing and doing are involved, a lot of complex psychological activity also gets involved. They cannot be separated. Action and mind can't be separated. So, with moral cleansing, you are also ushering a certain amount of cleansing of the mind. Then you don't stop at this with faith and wisdom and effort and mindfulness and patience and all kinds of very wholesome mental factors, spiritually wholesome mental factors. Not only that, then you are a person who need to, just to live, you've got to have a number of things. You've got to have food. If you don't eat, you don't live. And since survival compulsion is so powerful, you've got to eat. And in order to eat, you must get a job. You must do some work. You must do some business. You must do cultivation. You must teach. Otherwise, food will not simply come on a platter and stand before you and say, eat up. No. You have to work for it. to get. So activities again starts on that, livelihood. So morality involves livelihood. How you earn. You earn your living in an unwholesome way, in an unethical way, immoral way. You can't progress. All the mess up at the governmental level here we hear, all the dramas that go on constantly, and the newspaper men make a lot of money, make hay while the sun shines for them. So, all this is because of wrong livelihood, wrong moral living, wrong value system. Religion is a matter of individual perfection. Religion must lead to spiritual development. You mess up religion by mixing it up with politics, which simply means craving for power, craving for enjoyment, craving for pleasure, craving for name and fame. Defiling the mind all the time. You mix up these two things, which are unmixable, and create all the difficulties to the citizens of the city. All kinds of deprivation and problems and trouble and mental defilement, because they also get involved in this mess. So they cite somebody and they don't cite somebody else. So when you live in this world, this is how you get involved. So management of action in the wise manner simply means management in a very complex way. Not just few rules of moral conduct, but a whole lot of psychological activity sets in. Livelihood sets in. Very important aspect of life. Then you earn your livelihood, your living in a wholesome way, in a good way, and legally and morally. Now then you got to use many things to live. You have got to have food, you got to have clothes, you got to have a home, you have got to have medications, all kinds of things. So you keep on acquiring things. Whether you need them or whether you are driven by greed, not by considerations of need. Wise people say, have it when you need. Don't have it when you have greed. But how many people listen to them? That's a moot point. So now, you see, one has to extend this moral purification in all kinds of ways, in all spheres of existence. So you have now this cleansing simply means you can't eat anything you like. You can't kill and hunt and shoot and say, no, God has created animal for man to eat. And to hunt is a birthright. That is what President Bush, in a big way in the TV he declared. What a wonderful morality. And they are leaders of the world. So we live in a very topsy-turvy world. So we have got to be very careful there to manage life, manage action. So as you extend this process to all your essentials of life, morality gets very, very, complex and comprehensive. Further, you have relationship with the society. You have to live in a social, in a structure of society, social living, where many things you don't like, but you have to do. You have to comply. Or the country is needy. You live in a bigger society, the country, or a bigger, even still bigger, a whole block, Eastern bloc, Western bloc, communist bloc, non-communist bloc, etc. And the world. So here, action therefore becomes all-embracing. And when it is all-embracing, morality becomes all-embracing. And there you need very, careful management by means of mindfulness. You keep on developing mindfulness. You eat, be mindful. Don't overeat and suffer. Don't undereat and suffer. You put on dress not for show, not for boosting your egotism. No. You put forth a cloth to just preserve your body and for good health, etc. You don't put up a huge building to show up how big and massive is your ego. No, you just have a dwelling where you can be comfortable, from the inclemency of weather, etc. So now, this type of management of action therefore goes on, and a time comes when the moral purification becomes total. There is no more dirt in your activities, in your volitional activities of all kind, whether mental, verbal or bodily, physical, or social, or political, or economic, where everything is cleansed up and pure, and the mind also gets purified. So at that level, you acquire what is called a certain power, parami power, the power of perfection. So you can exactly, according to your will, you can so live that your action itself will be productive of spiritual development all the time. You will suffer very little from disease, you will suffer very little from short life, suffer very little from this, very little from that. You will enjoy good health, peace of mind, good relationship with human beings around, and the mind will enjoy peace. So today, this much, we will continue with the next. That is the purification of mind itself, not just qualities or factors of mind. With this I conclude. May the grace of Bhagavan Buddha surround your life with wisdom and well-being. May you all live pure life. May you all be happy.